All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen in a moment, but before I do, I wanted to welcome you on behalf of Buncombe County Strategic Partnerships Department. My name is Sarah Joss. I am a grants manager here in the department, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Angela Johnson, who is also a grants manager, who you will hear from today, and Rachel Sawyer, who is the director of our department. So as you all are already doing, I know that we have quite a few people in attendance. So instead of taking up time going around the virtual room, if you haven't already, if you could drop in the chat your name and the organization that you are representing. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. Okay. So before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know that we will send out these slides as well as a copy of the recording. So you can have those to look back on anytime throughout the contracting period and beyond during the life of your grant. So here's the agenda for our time together. The most important items for us to discuss today are related to the contracts, which is the way that Buncombe County structures our grant programs. So in that section, we'll get into the important details about how to access the grant funding. We've also built in time for questions and answers at the end, but if you think of any questions between now and the end of the presentation, please feel free to type them in the chat. And we will do our best to answer all of them at the end. You can also save them to the end if you'd like, and just raise your hand and we can get to them in real time. So we're going to be doing a little overview of the grants, looking at our FY25 grant awards, providing some organizational strengthening resources and tools once we look at our funding contracts and reporting and monitoring, as well as next steps for everyone to look forward to. So Buncombe County currently has 9 grant programs, which partner with community organizations across various domains in alignment with county priorities and goals. And an important website for you to jot down if it's not already in your favorites list is www.buncombecounty.org/grants. On this website, you're going to find details about each of our grant programs, such as the grant guidelines, awards, performance reporting is published there. Committee information for each grant program is included, so on and so forth. Some of you might already be familiar with this page, but if you haven't visited at this point, definitely make sure that you take an opportunity to do that. You can also find other information on this website about other county funding opportunities, such as aging services grants, the Clean Water Fund, community recreation grants, and more. So be sure to check it out. So on this screen, we're looking at a wonderful list of grantees for this year, FY 2025. You can see that each column shows early childhood grant recipients, strategic partnership grant recipients, and tipping point grant recipients. It's a really impressive group that is doing a lot of really exciting and impactful work in our community. So we are so grateful to all of you and really look forward to working with each of you. So looking at our funding cycle, you can see the arrow pointing to our grant period, which begins July 1st. July 1st is an important date because it is the start of the grant period, but it is also the start of our new fiscal year for the county. So your funding is to support the 12 months of our fiscal year, which run from July 1st to June 30th each year. So in this period, county staff are working hard to get everything ready to get you going on your grant programs. And the first step in that is to establish contracts, which Angelin is going to go over next.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Like Sarah said, I'm Angelin Johnson, one of the grant managers here in Strategic Partnership. Contracts are the way that Buncombe County will provide the funds to the grantees. And we follow certain rules that's given to us by the elected Board of Commissioners, like the resolution you see here on the screen. It says that we have to establish contracts that contain certain elements, including the financial assurances, insurance provisions, payment details, a scope of work, and reporting requirements. And we're going to go over each of these items over the next few slides. So one of the elements of our contract is the nonprofit financial assurances. As described in the grant guidelines, we collect certain financial assurances from nonprofit organizations that receive grants. The documentation for nonprofits include your most recent IRS 990 form, including documentation of receipt by the IRS, your current NC charitable solicitation license or exemption, as well as your financial statements. The financial statements that are required, they're tiered according to the size of the nonprofit. And the different levels are displayed here on the screen, and they're also outlined in your contract. If for any reason your organization is not able to provide the required assurances, let us know. We can review the situation on a case-by-case basis to see if you qualify for a waiver, so that you can submit a different level of documentation. But if we do grant a waiver, organizations will be scheduled for our contract monitoring during the fiscal year, and we'll discuss that a little bit later as well. Insurance is something that's pretty specific. We require contract organizations to have the appropriate insurance for what they do. We receive guidance from the county's risk management office about the level of insurance to request, and that depends on the nature of the work that's being conducted. When you receive your draft contract, you'll see a section listing which insurance is requested for the project and the amounts of coverage needed. If for any reason you feel like it's not necessary to carry the amount of insurance that's being requested, let us know so that we can look into that with you. On the screen here, you'll see a list of some of the common types of insurance that you may see in the contract. You can see that commercial general liability insurance is bolded. That's because at the very minimum, all organizations that receive county funds are required to carry general liability, and Buncombe County has to be named as an additional insured. You can find detailed information about all of the different types of insurance in the insurance overview document in the organizational strengthening resources that Sarah's going to go over a little later. But one note about the insurance, you can use grant funds to maintain the coverage as long as it's built into your budget. Once the contracts are fully executed, which means they're signed by both parties, you'll be eligible for payments per the terms of the contract. On the screen is our standard payment schedule for each grant program. For strategic partnership and early childhood grants, those call for invoices to be submitted quarterly for reimbursement. If you would like to request a different payment structure, reach out to us and let us know. For example, some projects are seasonal, so it doesn't make sense to spread the payments out across the entire year. Or some nonprofits may rely on the cash flow to conduct the work, so reimbursement might not work in those cases. But we'll start with this standard language, but we are committed to being as flexible as possible and helping to meet your needs. For the tipping point grants, those are paid in one lump sum payment up front once the contract is fully executed. The scope of work in our contract is the place where we document the agreement specific to your project. Almost everything else in the contract is boilerplate and applies to everyone, but this is the section that's all about your work. Our goal is to communicate the project in a straightforward list of activities that your organization agrees to complete. Thank you to everyone who has provided the requested information to help develop your scope of work. We're working to get the contracts to everyone as quickly as possible. Anything in the contract is up for discussion if you have a question or want to request a change. But the scope of work is the section where we have the most flexibility. So you'll want to make sure that you read that scope of work closely and let us know if you have anything that you would like to request to be changed. In every scope of work, there's a section for the reporting. We'll provide you with a reporting workbook to be used. Strategic partnership grants and early childhood grants submit quarterly reports. Tipping Point grants submit semi-annual reports, which is a mid-year report and an end-of-year report. All of the reports have three sections, a budget section, a narrative section, and the numerical. And we'll go over the Tipping Point grant report in just a minute. But for strategic partnership grants and early childhood grants, these sections have different tabs or worksheets within the Excel workbook. The budget section is basically a budget to actual report based on the approved starting budget, and it provides you a way to track quarterly spending against the initial plan. The spreadsheet will automatically total the overall amount for the quarter at the bottom of each column, which is the invoice amount for that quarter. It will also calculate the remaining amount per line item across the rows. Any budget changes of more than 10% to any line must be approved in writing ahead of time. So you would just simply send us an email explaining the line item change request and a brief explanation for the change, and we'll reply in writing so that you'll have that to keep with your contract records. And then this year for early childhood and strategic partnership grants, we have attached the approved starting budget as an attachment to your contract for easy reference. The narrative section is a chance for you to tell us about how the project is going. We provide a separate narrative box for each quarter so that people who are reviewing the report can see the year-to-date status updates. The narrative reporting does have a limited number of characters though, so please be concise. You are welcome to attach additional materials as separate documents if you'd like with the email, and then we'll add that to your report for the quarter. The final section of the quarterly report is for numerical measures and results. With your help, we have selected 3 to 5 numerical measures with annual goals for your reporting. You will report on these measures each quarter, but it's important to only report new unduplicated data each quarter. For example, if you're measuring the number of students in a classroom and there are 14 in quarter 1 and 15 in quarter 2, you would enter it as 14 in the Q1 column and then just 1 in Q2, because that would be your additional one for that one. Or if your enrollment dropped to 13 for a quarter 2, then you would put in -1, a -1 in quarter 2, so that would total that. The form's automatically going to calculate that overall column. Over in the very last column will be the overall total. Also, if you have performance measures that aren't relevant to each quarter, such as a measure that's only calculated twice a year in quarters 2 and 4, it's okay to leave those filled blank for the quarters that it doesn't apply to. Just please be sure to include a note in the comment section so that we know that it was intentionally left blank. The Tipping Point grant, those reports capture the same information as the other grant programs, just in a different simplified format, which you can see here on the screen. The activities accomplished section is where you would report the progress towards your annual goals. The expense section is where you list all grant related expenses. And the narrative summary is the chance for you to tell us about how the project's going. Again, you're welcome to attach additional materials as separate documents in the email to us if you'd like, and we'll add that to your report. So that's a run through of many of the areas in the contract where we have common questions. As far as next steps go, we're issuing contracts as quickly as we can. Many of you have already received your draft. If not, we'll be getting it to you as quick as possible. If you see anything in it that you would like to request be changed, just notify us, let us know. We'll work with you to get that updated. But if it's good to go, just sign it and email it back to us. You're no longer required to have the contracts notarized, and we do accept electronic signatures. You should also submit your nonprofit financial assurances and your certificate of insurance if you haven't already done so. And if your organization is new to Buncombe County grant funding, you'll also need to submit new supplier forms to be set up in our system. And we'll send those to you with your contract materials if those are needed. Now I'm going to hand it off to Sarah to talk about some resources and tools.
Great. Thanks, Angela. So as you navigate the ins and outs of the contract and grant management process, we wanted to share some helpful resources and tools. Last year, as some of you might remember, we rolled out brand new resources and tools to assist organizations in navigating the public funding landscape to ensure that all grantees have the support that they need to be successful in managing our community investment grants and beyond. So we wanted to highlight this as well as share some additional resources that we have added throughout the year. So the resources include a board member guide to public funding, a nonprofit insurance overview that Angeline talked about, which provides additional information about different insurance requirements and what purpose they provide. We have a finance guide and workbook, which takes you step by step through everything from financial statements to budgeting and risk to internal controls and compliance. So a really handy resource. There are also accompanying financial practices videos, which go hand in hand with the finance guide and workbook. Those are kind of bite-sized videos that walk you through each chapter of that finance guide and workbook. So definitely check those out. New this year, we have a fund accounting tool to help you set up a system for your grant funds, which Angeline talked about. And we have an internal controls overview, which outlines what internal controls are and why they're needed, as well as some common examples. There's a North Carolina Secretary of State nonprofit compliance document, which provides some quick and easy information to help you navigate your organization's charitable solicitation license or exemption requirements. And there is a public funding readiness checklist to help your nonprofit organization for success in managing government funds. So that's a nice checklist to go through to make sure that you are prepared to apply for and receive the fund. And all of these are available on our buncombecounty.org/grants page. So again, if you don't have that favorited or starred or saved on your bookmarks toolbar, make sure that you do that. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that page, you'll find those resources and tools. And I know in our last session, we got another idea for a great potential resource for time and effort certification or tracking. So if anyone has ideas for anything else that you'd like to see as a resource, please let us know. All right, now that we've gone through the contract process, we want to spend a little time to talk about contract monitoring. So this comes later once everything is already off and running with implementing your projects. But having everyone together here on today's call is a great opportunity for us to give you a little bit of information just so that we're all on the same page as we move forward. So contract monitoring is a set of activities that we undertake related to government grant funding, which ensures that adequate progress is being made toward project goals and funds are being properly spent and accounted for. Staff conduct basic monitoring for all contracts each year, such as carefully reviewing your quarterly reports and following up with you as questions arise. But we also conduct a more in-depth type of contract monitoring, which some of you might know as a desk review. Not all organizations receive an in-depth desk review every year. We select organizations for these reviews based on a random sample and also do them as needed if an organization requests a financial waiver or if issues or complaints arise. So desk reviews involve an interview style meeting with questions related to the contract, both programmatic and financial. We also gather a set of follow-up documents to verify reported information. Again, both that programmatic and financial information. And once we review the documents, we provide a contract monitoring report that includes any follow-up items or potential corrective actions. We want to make sure that everyone is aware that we are committed to being as supportive as possible throughout your contract process and your grant process. So we do have those resources for organizational capacity building. And we also allow grant funds to be used for capacity building purposes. So if that's something that you can identify with your organization as, needing to beef up on certain types of financial practices or compliance related items, that is something that you can write into your project budget. Just let us know if that's something you're interested in. So just to give you an idea of common findings that we see occur. The first one, and one of the most common ones, is not having a method of linking expenses to your grant. So the payment section of your contract requires that your organization follows appropriate bookkeeping and accounting practices, including fund accounting, which I mentioned is a resource on our grants, buncombecounty.org/grants page. So fund accounting basically means that your organization should have a method for separating Buncombe County grant funds from other funds received and expended by the organization, essentially restricting funds. It doesn't mean that it has to be kept in a separate bank account, just that organizations have to have a way to link expenditures to specific grants. Grants such as this Buncombe County funding are provided for a specific purpose, which creates restrictions on the use of these funds. And using fund accounting allows you to demonstrate the specific expense for each grant and allows Buncombe County to identify which expenses are associated with public dollars. So regardless of the specific accounting method used, Buncombe County does require the ability to provide a detailed list of expenditures associated with grant funds. So something to think about as you're setting up your accounting systems for your grant project. Another one is missing receipts. So while organizations aren't required to submit copies of receipts with your reports, we do require that you keep your receipts on hand in case we do request them. And your tracking systems can be electronic or paper records. Electronic is ideal if possible, but no matter how you save your receipts and other backup documentation, you'll need to be able to provide them when asked. And it should be clearly evident that the expense was for a public purpose allowable within the grant. Another one that we see is lacking organizational policies. So during many of our reviews, we find organizations without policies and procedures for internal controls. So common ones that we see, examples might be a purchasing or procurement policy, a credit card policy, things of that nature. So definitely make sure that you are looking into all of your organization's policies and make sure that they are up to date and reflect accurately what your organization's practices are. And then the final one here in the common findings is not utilizing time and effort tracking. So if your grant is funding staff costs, there should be a system in place for documenting employee time and effort as well as associated expenses with that. So it's important to keep detailed time and effort records, especially when staff are funded by multiple sources. So if an employee contributes less than 100% of their time, the portion of the grant paid salary should be reflective of the time and effort the individual has put forth for that specific project. A method for tracking time and effort should be consistently followed and correspond with grant invoices. So this can be automated, like an app or personnel system where you're tracking employee time, or it can be manual, like paper timesheets. But no matter the system that's used, your organization should have methods in place for making sure that the information is consistent and accurate. I know that was a lot of information. Here is our contact information, and just a note, Angelin is the main point of contact for early childhood and tipping point grants, and I am the main point of contact for strategic partnership grants. But if you have questions, please, there's no wrong door to open or to knock on. We are available to help in whatever way we can, and if one of us isn't available, the other one is a perfectly good resource to come to with any questions. And again, we're going to send out a PDF of these slides so that you have all of this information. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop the slides, and we can use the rest of our time for any questions that might have come up throughout the presentation. I know there were a couple that came through the chat while we were presenting, and I wanted to make sure that everyone got to reap the benefits of those questions and responses. So the first one was, is reimbursement by check or EFT? Either one. We do offer electronic reimbursement or check, paper check mailed to you reimbursement. If you do want electronic reimbursement, like a direct deposit, we do have a form that your organization will need to fill out. And if you don't know how your organization is set up in our system, we're happy to look. Just ask us and we can let you know. And with the reporting templates, yes, staff is going to be customizing reporting templates for your project, for your organization. And we will be sending those out once contracts have been fully executed. So keep an eye out for those forthcoming. All right, looks like we have another question in the chat. If an employee is working on more than one project, a timesheet doesn't indicate effort to strategic partnership grant very effectively. Do you have a form you'd like to receive in this case?
So I'll take the first stab at it, and Rachel or Sarah, either one of you can chime in as well. And we don't have a specific form, but you just have to, you need some method of tracking, like how much of, it could be a percent or the number of hours. You just need to know, how much of that employee's time is being spent on that project so that you'll know the correct amount to bill the grant for that time and effort. But again, we don't have a specific form. You can track it in a spreadsheet, you can track it manually on paper. Just whatever internal method you have set up to track that time.
Yeah, and Susan, if you want to chat about it, we could talk about the payroll sort of time app or system already used within your organization, and some easy, hopefully, we can strategize and come up with some light burden or less burdensome ways that could be tweaked to get the accountability that meets the need for the restricted grant funds, while also making it doable for the worker who's tracking their time.
Jose, it looks like I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in that matter, sometimes what we do, we have been working with Buncombe County, and the way we do either create we have electronic, but they turn into a paper form, and or create a new form to keep track of those hours, or it can be with other activities supported by other grants, and then we can highlight those hours that were utilized for the purpose of this grant. Which way do you leaning toward? Because it's easier for in this case, the community health worker to have one, and then it can highlight this is for this grant. So would that be doable? Do you think it might be? I mean, I go through each invoice and then highlight it and then turn it. That's the way I've been turning it to other grants contracts.
Jose, thank you for sharing your practices for others to hear, and also to your question. Whatever is easy enough that you feel like your group can be consistent with, and you all have the tracking that you need internally in case you're asked. Like Sarah explained, we don't collect that level of documentation from all of the grantees at billing time, but if we check in, that you'll have that available to show the basis for what was billed, then we support what you've come up with.
Thank you very much.
Other questions that folks have?
I have a question about the fund accounting tool. I haven't seen it. It will be interesting to have, because we have been, again, working with Buncombe County. We're able to spreadsheet the date, the either company or the community health worker, the category, the amount, and the invoice number. And then on the other side, we send PDFs for invoices. That might work, and then they're organized by date, obviously. And we used to work also with the state that they call something like the mayor, which there were different Excel sheets. It was crazy. So I think if you have that fun accounting tool, I think will be a good implementation. So in that way, hopefully it's not as complicated. I said, I haven't seen it yet. I'm curious about it, because that will make my life easier also.
And we have a few different area consultants that we're familiar with that have worked with community-based organizations in the past. I'm sure you all have your own networks and relationships with some of the same and some different ones. We worked with an outside accounting firm to help us come up with that, somebody that does a lot of nonprofit accounting and bookkeeping with organizations in this area. So we're happy to meet with you, talk with you about what we know, and then potentially connect you with resources beyond our office for extra coaching as appropriate.
Thank you.
And I did drop that specific link to that in the chat so that it's hopefully easy to access. Other questions?
This is Belinda, and you explained it very well, but I want to be clear. If a goal, I'll make up a number, is to follow 100 participants, some people say clients, and in the first quarter, you see 100, so you've met your goal. The second quarter, you see 105. In the second quarter, you only add the number 5. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And you can verify the total. That very last column on it will be your overall total, so you can make sure that that is matching up with what you've done for the year. But yeah, so you're just putting the new unduplicated data in those new quarters.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Not to be overcomplicated, Belinda, but your new number might be 6 or 7 or 8, because if you had some of the ones from quarter 1 not be served anymore, we don't want your client contacts. We want you to go through and figure out, how many unduplicated total, which is why we have you all do that math for us.
Anything else?
it makes me so happy to see all these faces and know the diverse different types of projects and community work that y'all are doing, and see groups represented here and people represented here that we have years of doing this together. And it's also really energizing every year to see new groups and new people come in to the fold to working with Buncombe, whether you're a friendly face that we know well or you're newer to us. We hope that you'll feel comfortable reaching out anytime. We aim to be as responsive as we can. We are a public government funder, so we can't always give flexibility. And we want to always commit to telling you what's not flexible if there's some kind of government restriction that causes us to be asking for a certain thing in a certain way, but we're also committed to being as flexible as we can where we can. So what the payment schedule looks like, how your funds get drawn down, or moving funds from one line item to another, or changing the scope if you find a curveball at some point during the year, just reach out, and we will walk alongside and do what we can to try to get these funds into your hands as quickly and smoothly as possible, so that you all can be out there in the community doing that important work.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. That's very kind. We love working with all of our community partners. It is so incredible to get to see all of the amazing work that you all are doing. We wish that we could fund everyone in our community. So thank you all so much for all of the work that you continue to do. We know how much it is. And like Rachel said, please hear us that we are here for any and all questions through the contracting period and beyond. If, once you have your contract fully executed, you have funds in hand and you're ready to roll and you still have questions, let us know. We are happy to talk through things anytime. So please do know that we are available and we would love to hear. Also, we love to hear wins and successes. So send those our way as well. And as Angela mentioned, if you haven't received a draft contract yet, you will be receiving one very shortly. So do stay tuned and make sure that you definitely look through that draft contract. Like both Angela and Rachel said, we want to be as flexible as possible in the ways that we can be, and that is in the contracting period. So do make sure that you're going over the scope of work, the payment terms, the budget, to make sure that everything is aligning with your needs for project success. And we will do our absolute best to be as flexible as possible to make that happen. All right. Well, I'm going to give everyone back 20 minutes of their day. And so good to see all of your faces. I look forward to working with all of you throughout the year. And again, thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you for all the information.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.